safe. So what we've done is I have taken every room in every shelter and I've actually divided it by 60 square feet. And what that allows you is 36 square feet of personal space and then a small buffer before you get to the next personal space. Not every person will get 60 square feet though. The amount of spaces your household gets is determined by the size of your household, because we recognize that a family doesn't need to social distance from each other, from themselves. They just need to social distance from the next household. So we've come up with this plan where you will be assigned a number of spaces depending on the size of your household, and that gives you sufficient space to shelter yourselves and distance from the next household. Now, another difference we're doing this year that we didn't do in the past is when you register when you show up for the shelter, you will be assigned a room. So before, when you came to a shelter, you were registered in and you were just let loose on campus to go find a place to hunker down. In order to maintain control of the social distancing safe space, everyone will be assigned a room to take space in. We will not be separating families, so you will be assigned to the same room with everyone in the household that you showed up with. You will be given a wristband that has that room number on it, and it will be color coded. And that helps for any disputes. If a resident is having trouble with another resident who is encroaching on their space, we can verify that they are even supposed to be in that room. We do have a mask requirement this year. We are putting away some masks to help those that show up without one, but we encourage you to bring your own mask and your own hand sanitizer, even though we will have them available. You know, there's a lot of people in this county, so we do encourage that you put those in your evacuation kit this year. Back to the wristbands. So the reason we're going to have those color coded is for meal times. So in any of our shelters, we do provide 3 meals a day to anyone taking shelter in a special needs general pop or pet friendly shelter. But we're not going to have everyone sitting in the cafeteria. We feel that that is not good social distancing. So everyone will get their meal, and instead of it being a buffet style, you will be given basically a to-go container with your meal in it, and you will take it back to your shelter location, your bed area to eat. But we don't want everyone, you know, running to the cafeteria at one time. So we will actually be calling by color of wristband, and that helps to spread everyone out. It allows you to keep 6 feet of space between you as you're approaching to get your food. And we would do one color right after the other in no particular order until everyone has their meal and is back at their space. And that is all I've prepared. So I really appreciate you having me today, and thank you for taking the time to listen.
Thank you, Mecca. That's some great information regarding the shelters. All right, up next we have Jess McCracken, the whole community educator from Pinellas County Emergency Management. Jess, I think you are on mute.
We good?
There we go.
There we go. Okay. So whether you know it or not, the speakers before have actually given you a really good first part of your hurricane preparedness plan. Keeping yourself and your family safe is the most important thing, and knowing your exposure, knowing what your options are and where you can go, and making the plan to do that and evacuate and get your family and yourself safe is a really good base to starting your hurricane preparedness plan. So the second part, or another part of the hurricane preparedness plan, is preparing your property. And before the storm, you really want to look at taking the things from your lawn and bringing them inside. So anything in a high wind event that is not secured to the ground will become a missile. And you don't want to cause additional damage to your home or your neighbor's home or cars. So bringing in all of those lawn ornaments, bird baths, and bringing them all the way inside your house to secure them from not going flying when we have high winds will really cut down on the damage to your home and the homes around you. You want to turn all the utilities off at the base, your water, your electric, and your gas. Lock all your windows and doors. You may get back to your home after other people in the community, and you want to make sure that if and when your home survives, that all of your valuables and all of your personal belongings are safe. And again, anything that can become windborne, you want to bring it all the way inside. So I saw with Irma, people taking things from their lawn and putting it up against the house, and that really doesn't do anything except get that item closer to your home. So you're going to bring it all the way inside. And of course, a plan is not worth anything if nobody knows about it. So once you've made your evacuation plans, go ahead and let your friends and relatives know where you're planning to go and what your plans are. Go ahead. So No Known Left Behind is a fun campaign that we've launched in emergency management. And basically, we were going around to the mobile home parks and reminding the residents, especially our seasonal residents, to bring all of your lawn ornaments inside. As you can see here, this is a no-me-no. And you can imagine that these items would be really dangerous in a high wind event. Go ahead. So preparing your property, it's important to remember the ABCs: anchor, brace, cover, and strap. And you can change it something. So when we're talking about anchoring, you're wanting to, again, bring inside that can become windborne. Consider lightweight mulch, shredded mulch versus a rock or gravel landscape. And you want to trim down those trees and the foliage to prevent any loose branches or any decayed branches from snapping and breaking as soon as that wind hits and becoming windborne. You can talk to an installer about giving you some recommendations if you've got a shed, something that you can't actually pick up, especially a shed that has a lot of heavy equipment in it. You don't want those things to become windborne. That can be very, very, very dangerous. So talk to an installer about recommended methods to getting those structures or your carports, things like that, how to get those secured to the ground. Go ahead. Now, when we're talking about bracing, this is reinforcing your garage tracks, your door tracks. You want to make sure you're bolting all of your doors with foot and head bolts. So typically you want to use a minimum of a 1-inch bolt in length. And again, working with a licensed, bonded, and insured contractor to make sure that the work is permitted and done properly. And you can go ahead. Just another thing on that. If you are a homeowner, you've probably heard of a wind mitigation inspection, and that basically, it inspects your roof. It also qualifies you for discounts on your insurance, but it's an inspection for a roof that inspects the roof-to-wall connections, the wall to ground foundation connections, the wind resistance of your roof, and your windows. And a lot of insurance companies require that you have that. So you probably already have that done. So you want to maybe pull that inspection out or ask your insurance agent for it to take a look at what you're working with. And maybe a couple $100s can give you upgrades on that. And really, it will make a difference when we are in a wind event. So when we're talking about covering, the best option is your impact resistant laminated windows and door systems, if that's something that you're able to do. If not, you want to cover all your large windows and doors with approved impact resistant shutters, especially patio doors. You have sliding glass doors that are coming into the home. You really want to make sure that those are covered and secured. You want to make sure all your windows and doors are properly caulked. That will stop any water intrusion from getting in the house, or at least lessen the damage from that. And install a roof covering that's rated for high wind and impact. Now, roof can be very expensive, but you may be able to do some replacements on the roof that could stop loose shingles from flying off and ultimately stopping the water from intruding in there. Go ahead. And when we talk about straps, again, tying down any freestanding fixtures in your yard, so your sheds, your carports. In mobile home parks, the number one cause of damage is these carports getting ripped off because the wind actually has the ability to get under there. So you see that these straps have been installed to secure that roof to the ground. Go ahead. And these are just some fun facts here at the bottom about planting trees, rooting, what trees survive best. But you want to remember that once you go through and get all those decayed and old tree branches cut down, you want to dispose of those piles of limbs because that will be a huge missile that's going to be going flying once you hit a wind event. Bring in all large items from your yard. And in advance, again, cutting down those decayed old tree branches that have the ability to snap and will cause damage to your home. We've got to remember to not drain our pools. This is a myth, a common misperception. What you want to do is you want to super chlorinate the water, maybe even some anti-algae or something, because you will have contamination from items coming into the pool. You don't want to drain your pool. It will or could cause your pool to lift or ultimately pop out of the ground, and you definitely don't want that. Go ahead. Now we're talking about association ground preparation for condos, homeowners, or resident-owned communities or mobile home parks. You want to know the association's responsibility. You want to know on the bylaws, in your bylaws, you have a list of things that the association is responsible for versus what the homeowner is responsible for. Never expect that something is going to get done. So we want to know who's responsible for what, and then go ahead and create an action item checklist. What's going to be done, what needs to be done, when does it need to be done, who's going to do it, how you're going to get it done, and how you're going to document that it was done, and then practice. Again, a plan is only as good as who knows about it and how many times you've actually practiced doing these things. So, for example, you may say on the 5-day cone, I'm going to do X, Y, Z. So you know you're putting your plan in place, and believe it or not, that can go into your hurricane preparedness plan. And if you're an association, you want to share that with your residents, post it. I've experienced some associations that actually have their residents sign off that they have read the emergency plan. That way, there are no expectations. You don't want the residents of your association, if you're a board member, you don't want these residents dependent on things that are not going to be available. If your clubhouse is going to be closed, which a lot of them are because of the liability issues, you don't want somebody not evacuating and then trying to get in there and not having access to safety. Next slide, please. Now, association property can consist of anything in the common areas, but again, those are spelled out in your bylaws, and it's very important that you know what those things are. These are things like your central office, your clubhouse, your office inside, your underground utility lines, and the pedestals. Typically, the pedestals are owned by the mobile home park owner, if we're talking about an ROC or a mobile home park, but they are maintained by the association. So it's very important to know who's going to take care of that. Make that plan before. Roads and walkways, fences and signage, association-owned vehicles, washers and dryers in your laundry rooms, and then homes on the property that are owned by the association or the resident-owned community. You need to make sure that you are taking care of those just like the homeowners on your property, because we definitely don't want one of those mobile home parks coming loose or the roof ripping off and damaging the homes around it. Next slide. So we've gone through, and Summer and Mecca did a great job about informing you how to protect yourself and your family, because people are number one, of course. We've gone through how to protect your property and therefore protecting your contents or as if you're looking at it from a business perspective. But when we're talking about a business, we want to really think about one more step before we go into creating that plan. Go ahead, Summer. So there's an extra line of defense when you're talking about preparation, and that is preparing your insurance. So in my previous life, I came from the dark side, the insurance world, and I worked with condo associations all along the beaches here, and seeing them prepare and what the difference was in the aftermath from those associations that had planned versus those that didn't have a plan, it was mind-blowing. So I really always tried to push that. So there are very easy things that you can remember and very simple things you can do in blue skies is sit down and talk to your insurance professional. They know the options, they know the carriers, they know what you have available to you. But until you know the first thing, which is what is my exposure, you're not going to be able to make those decisions later on in the process. So exposure is what elements, what hazards, what perils your building is more susceptible to. Then you can go into what are my options with that. There may be some tweaks that you can do on the policy that would be very small in premium, but huge payoff in the aftermath. And then understanding your coverage and knowing how it's going to respond in a disaster situation. Go ahead, Summer. Sorry. So when we're talking about exposure, one exposure that's very big here in the state of Florida is flooding. Florida is surrounded by water on three sides, so any area can flood. You always hear high risk, low risk. They're also called standard or preferred zones. And like Summer said, flood zone is not the same thing as an evacuation zone. Flood is rising or seeping waters, and it's a completely different thing. You can find it at your flood risk, your pinellascounty.org /flooding. You'll put your address in there, and it will give you your flood zone. Again, any area in the county can flood. You may be in a low risk flood zone, but people in low risk flood zones account for 20% of flood claims filed with the National Flood Insurance Program, and also account for 1/3 of disaster relief funding through NFIP. So as you can see, you still have the ability, there's still the possibility that your home could flood. So it's very important that you look into this. This could be one of the things that you talk to your insurance agent about as an option. Low risk flood policies are very inexpensive, less than $500 a year for $200,000 in building coverage, which can make a huge difference when you have a flood event. And again, for safety, you want to stay away from flood waters, turn around, don't drown. Next slide, please. Now, when we're talking about options, one thing we need to look at is first, know what your deductibles are. This is something that typically you choose on policy, but you have an all other peril deductible and a hurricane deductible. Now, your hurricane deductible is going to take effect when there is a named hurricane. Other than that, everything that's covered in your policy is covered by your all other peril deductible. And I will give you an example. I had a client in Indian Rocks when Tropical Storm Hermine came on the grid. Their building was insured for $5 million. Their all other peril deductible was $5,000. Typically, it's a flat deductible versus your hurricane deductible, which is a percentage of your building value. So the damage was done to their association by Tropical Storm Hermine. Now, fast forward to Hermine coming up around the Panhandle, and then it was upgraded and declared a hurricane. And at that time, all insurance policies are now subject to the hurricane deductible. They had a 5% hurricane deductible, so you can imagine the frustration of this association when their damage was now subject to a $250,000 deductible, 5% of that $5 million coverage versus their flat all of the peril deductible of $5,000. So it's very important that you know what the percentage equals out to. If that's something that you're comfortable with, that's good. You can also increase the deductibles. It lowers the premium. Really look at that, what you're getting for what you're saving, and think about it after the storm if you're going to be able to come up with that higher deductible limit. Next slide, please. Now, business preparation for our small business owners. Of course, your staff, people first, safety. Your workforce is your biggest asset. It's very important that you build your workforce into your hurricane plan and give them time to leave your business to go home and prep for their families. We talked about some ways to harden the buildings and how to protect the things inside. But one more step with businesses. So as a homeowner, of course, we want to be able to get back into our home safely. We want our homes up and running again. But businesses are reliant on income to stay in business, to stay, to where they're able to operate and make money. So before you create your plan, there's one more thing that I want to talk about to consider. And that is your business continuity plan. So you want to have business continuity, which is anything from backing up your data to knowing how you're going to work remotely, looking at your cloud capacity, making sure all of your data, all the contacts, everything that you basically use to run your business is planned for. You know what to expect in a disaster, where you're going to go, where your employees are going to go, how that's going to work, be able to talk on the phone, having amazing platforms like webinar or Zoom, which we've seen with COVID. Luckily, we have been able to continue getting education and presentations out there because of platforms like this. But had this not, had we not have access to this, we would have to figure out what the next plan was. Now, there is a coverage on your insurance policy, on your business insurance policy, and it's called business income. And this will pay you for some time that you are not able to have your doors open. So it's very important that you discuss and know what your limits are and know what your needs are. So that way you're covering your risk. Next slide, please. Now these slides I got from Brian Ellis with the Tampa Bay Regional Planning Council. He is by far the expert on business continuity, and I will give some of his contact information. He is encouraging you to reach out, and he's got a lot of great tools that you can put a couple of pieces of information into a system, and it actually starts your plan for you. Just a couple of numbers that I thought were interesting. FEMA estimates almost 40% of small businesses that closed after disaster never reopened because they didn't have that business continuity plan. So you can plan to protect your building and your people, but if you don't know how you're going to do business outside of a building that's damaged, or once you're able to get back, it's going to be very hard to recover. And the Insurance Institute for Business and Home Safety and U.S. Small Business Administration estimate that 1 in 4 businesses can expect to experience a disruptive disaster. And as you can see, all of our businesses now are facing this exact situation. And so it puts it to the test when you know that you have a backup platform, all of your data is safe and secure, that you're able to kind of pick up right where you left off. Next slide. Right. And again, this is the link here to that disaster planning toolkit. And Brian Ellis with Tampa Bay Regional Planning Council will be expecting your call. I really encourage our small business owners to reach out to him, because it's a very helpful tool to get your businesses up and running again. Thank you so much. Oh, just kidding. We're going to talk about claims. Probably the thing that plagues everybody the most after the storm is going through the claims process, because it can be very frustrating, especially if you don't know what your rights are, what your responsibilities are. So the claims process, especially in a catastrophic claim situation, it works kind of like this. You have outside adjusters that are flown into the state. They're put in a hotel room. They're given a stack of files from the ground to their shoulder. And they're paid by which files they close. So which ones are they going to close, or which ones are they going to do first? The ones they close the quickest, right? To start getting paid on these. So a complete claim, a complete file looks like this. It has pictures, it has maintenance records if you're in an association, it has roof installation documentation. It's got everything in there. So let's say, God forbid, if your house is completely flattened, it's going to be very hard to see what was there before. So a picture's worth 1,000 words. You can do it today, spend an hour and a half walking around your house, and it's done. You've got those pictures, and that's something that you can provide to your adjuster, and it really helps your claim process go smooth and much quicker. Temporary repairs, because an insurance policy is a one-way contract where you are responsible to mitigate against further damage, any temporary repairs will probably be covered and most likely okay with the insurance company, because if it's preventing further damage from happening, then that's less money that the insurance company is going to have to pay out and less damage to your home. So do not put yourself in harm's way to do this, but if you are safely able to make these temporary repairs, I definitely encourage you to do so. Again, keeping good records, photos and video and maintenance records, and doing proper property disposal. Do not sign an assignment of benefits. This basically takes you out of the middle of the claim and gives the insurance company and your contractor the ability to negotiate without any approval from you. So please do not sign assignment of benefits. Do not sign anything you do not understand and agree with, because once you sign it, it's in writing. So you want to make sure, ask as many questions as you need to, get the information you need, so that way your claim process goes smoothly and you're happy with how the results turn out. I think that wraps me up.
All right, thank you. That was great information. And just a reminder, if anyone has any questions throughout this webinar, you're welcome to ask them in the questions box or in the comment section of our Facebook Live. And now we have Officer Vu Tran with the Largo Police Department. Vu, I think you are on mute.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you for having me here on this Hurricane Preparedness event. I want to go over the basics 101, what expected in law enforcement during the natural disaster crisis situation like this. The role of law enforcement in responding to a disaster is very similar to a day-to-day role of public safety and supporting the community. The things that we do are maintaining overall public safety within the community, and we also help with evacuations, and especially when the emergency order has been issued by the state, the governor, or so on and so forth. And part of our job is to help with evacuations. We also do door-to-door checks if it's come out to that situation, and to provide that security and to get people out of their resident, help FD with the evacuation. Lastly is search and rescue. This is just an overview that we will assist post the storm. So that's some of the basics information, and I'll go over on each of the bullet in a moment. Next slide, please. So in the state of local emergency situations, our cities will allow the evacuation order. When that taking place, we will go out into the community like we did in the past, where we drive around the mobile home park and make an announcement. So we urge that you watch the local news and stay informed so that you know your zone, so that you can evacuate properly, so there's no delay in that situation. We assist in that form. We provide traffic safety, and when we assist with that, the traffic safety, we can use any means necessary to provide route for the evacuations route. And in that form would be, barrier, cones, we blocking traffic, blocking lanes, so that the evacuation route can go smoothly if it comes to that situation. Again, we modify the lane uses, the timing signal of the traffic, and all that to help the transitions going from evacuation zone to a shelter or to a different area. We also provide the security damage to the area. Now, if there are damages to the area, patrol will go out to provide security in that area. And let's, for example, I'll pick Largo Mall. If Largo Mall is one of the places that have significant impact, we may staff officer there to provide security in that area to prevent the criminals to come in and looting the businesses. The same rules apply to your community in the sense that if your community got hit really hard and there's a lot of damages to the house, we would go in and have officer control that area, control access, control the evacuation area so that, you know, the looter can come in and steal from your property. In addition to that, the other role that we also take really is the provide security shelter for the shelter in place. And I want to touch base on that is in a sense that this is a a shelter is not a cruise ship. So please don't bring any things in the sense of like fire or any explosive device or anything like that. Keep in mind, I also ask that you would bring patients to the shelter. Bring only essential items to the shelter. Again, please do not bring any guns. Do not bring any weapons in there, alcohol or any drugs. I had the privilege to work at the shelter during Irma, and one of the things that I think a lot of the community member is to be kind to each other, because this is a hard time. And with COVID, is still here. So please don't be that person in cost of starving. Don't be that person to create problem within the shelter, and that will prompt us to take law enforcement action. And if we need to, we will remove you from the shelter. Lastly is, your home, secure your home, secure your vehicle. All that is very important. Do what the guideline have informed you. Secure your home via hurricane shutter, board up, and take valuable things out of your home and secure it in a different area. Next, please. Now, post-storm, one of the things that Largo Police Department do is to go out to assess what kind of damage to the area. And our job is then to provide that information to our command posts. And if we need to, we can work along with public work to remove any area of debris, trees, so on, to provide that security. Search and rescue is one of the important roles that we also do. We have what we call is a team response force in a search and rescue incident, where officer will go with a team to provide protection and to help identify the victim who may have passed during this natural disaster incident. We don't want people to think that, the FD or medical personnel or public work doesn't have the protection when they go. We will provide that protection. Protect the community from criminal activity. That's just a basic information. That's just an overall things that we do on our daily day-to-day practice. But this is just more vigilant. We're going to be out there, more patrol in the area that's had hit with the hurricane, and there's a lot of damage to the area. Secure recovery and of the distribution sites is one of the important roles, because I had the privilege to go to the Panhandle during the Hurricane Michael, and they have they utilize a big parking lot for the distribution site, and there will be staff there to provide that security to the staff as well as the community member that go to receive this help. Next, please. Now, reentry is one of the things that is important. So I encourage you to bring your proper identification, your ID, your driver license. Same thing if it's business owner, but usually this is there a checkpoint, and for the most part is handled by the sheriff. We probably will assist with that as well. And one of the things that I want to stress is, like, for example, if a community got really hit hard with the hurricane, and you being the homeowner, you go in, try to retrieve or look what's left of your house, we're probably going to have an officer to ID you to say whether or not you're the homeowner. And what's the best way for us to do that is for you to show us your ID. And I have questions when I do this in the community. People say, well, what if I don't have a Florida ID? Then I say, well, what about utility bills? If you're one of the snowbird season resident, then you may have some kind of bank statement or utility bills to provide that kind of proof. Same go with business owner. If you're going to have your employees to check on your business, I stress that you give them some form of authorizations that we know that they are the employee of your businesses. One of the last things that I want to say about traffic law, we will still going to enforce our traffic laws, but we're going to ask you that during the hurricane and the traffic lights are out, they're flashing red or flashing yellow, please treat that as a four-way stop sign if it's flashing red, so that you should come to a complete stop and watch your left, your right, before you enter into the intersection. Just flashing yellow, just slow down. Pay attention to oncoming car. See if any other oncoming cars before you proceeded to go through intersection to avoid any traffic accident. One of the last things I want to ask is, please, it's so important that you keep your phone number with you of your family who live outside of Florida, because during Irma, we got a lot of phone calls of families calling checks on their family members for, welfare checks. So I ask that if you're staying in a shelter or a friend, a house of a friend during the evacuation, and once it's over, please call them. Even if it's just simple of a text or an email, or maybe just message them on Facebook to let you know that you are safe, and that so that they don't have to worry about you, and they don't have to call the PD to ask for a welfare check on you. So that's help us to focus on what we need to do during the hurricanes and after the storm. That's all I have, and if you have any questions, I'll be here for the Q&A. So thank you.
Thank you, Officer Tran. All right, up next we have Tony Salvarezza with Duke Energy to discuss electrical safety, generator safety, and power restoration.
Yeah, good morning. Good morning, Summer. Thank you for allowing me and Duke Energy to participate in this hurricane preparedness seminar. So again, Tony Salvarezza, I'm the general manager for Duke Energy in regional services here in Florida. And today I'm going to just kind of talk about everything that Duke Energy is doing, either to prepare for the storm, and then what we do during the storm, and then how we get ready and how we prepare and how we restore power. So the sequence of events, the people that go out in the field, and the organization, and the size and magnitude of things that happen behind the scenes right now as we prepare and plan, and then during the active instant command type setup where we put people on the ground and in the neighborhoods where the damage may occur. So a lot of our customers will reach out to Duke Energy and receive updates, and generally they won't even speak to a customer agent or someone at Duke. They can dial in. When they dial in, they can talk to the computer, and the computer has different prompts that folks can step through. And with those prompts, you can get updates on just about everything associated with your area, your outages, and your current location and power restoration, or ETR, so estimated time to restoration. So we have a lot of that information that's already on our website, and that website is www.duke-energy.com. Then there's a link that takes you to outages for your state, and I would say go on your computer now, bookmark that line, and hopefully you have power. That's our job, right? We want to make sure that your power stays on, unless you're evacuated and you're actually going to disconnect and go away. But if you have a laptop and you take that with you, or a phone where you can log in and look at that stuff, you can go to that www.duke-energy.com and connect and look at outages and look at the outages in the area and actually report outages through the website. So you can report outages, you can view the current outages. You also have an app that you can go on and download that app from Duke Energy and get the information on your phone, on your laptop, and then dial a dial-up number. So you can call the 800 number. And that number is on our website as well as 800-228-8485. So I encourage everybody to bookmark that, write it down, put it in your pocket, put it in your wallet, put it in your purse, wherever you can, and put that in your information. So, next slide. So where does it start? Go to the next slide. I'm sorry. Yep. So I was talking about outage restoration. I forgot to tell Summer to go to the next slide. Let's go to where does it start? So generation. We have to be able to make the power. So in order to deliver the power, we have to make it, and we have power plants stationed throughout the state. Currently have about 12 generating sites with 59 different generators that generate about 10 or 11,000 megawatts during the summertime. And that serves our 1.7 million customers that we currently have here in Florida. So those power plants are stationed throughout the state, all out through our service territory, and they're strategically placed in different areas to supply the load, either for the whole organization through transmission and distribution, or through different switchings and sales and agreements with neighboring utilities to be able to get the power to where it needs to be during a storm or during any given time. So in the recent hurricane that we had, Hurricane Irma, from a generation standpoint, the way it came up through the whole state, and you heard Dennis talk about that earlier, it impacted a large part of our service territory. Believe it or not, it impacted almost every generating site that we had. The good part or the bad part, that it impacted our entire organization and hit all of our different sites, was even though we had sites that came offline and were not available, we ended up having the power to serve the customers as we went through restoration. So areas that have underground, naturally those areas are energized and they're very robust, and we're doing our part to harden our energy and harden our grid to make sure that we're improving our response time, improving our reliability, improving the service to our customers. So after the hurricane passes, we do damage assessments in our power plants. We make sure that they're ready to go and that they can serve the load as the storm passes and it's safe to do so. So next slide. So some of the common outage causes that we see as Duke Energy as a whole. So what are they? So we have vehicle collisions, we have animal contact, we have equipment failures, we have the storms. Naturally, that's one of the big ones that we're talking about here. And then finally, we have trees. So you think about trees. When a tree comes into contact with a power line, it creates a surface to ground, or it creates an issue associated with how we get power to your house. So again, encouraging you to have your areas trimmed back and have those trees reported, so that you say, hey, I have a tree that's touching or approaching or encroaching on a power line. And we do a lot of surveys and we do a lot of tree trimming at Duke Energy, but a lot of times trees will move via the wind, and you don't really see some of that stuff. So I would encourage you to take that survey now as a customer in our service territory to say, I have some concerns about this tree or this area or this contact. Maybe at least report it out to us and put it out there for a concern, and we'll come out and take a look at it and see if it needs to be done. And naturally, it would have to be trimmed by a professional and then make sure that the area is safe. Next slide. So how do we manage our organization? When in a storm, we have distribution centers. Again, we go back to where we had power plants. We have distribution control centers, so our DCC, and then our energy control center that controls the flow of power throughout the state. So that flow of power, allows transmission lines, breakers, and dispatch areas to be connected to where the power is needed, and through that control system is how we get the power from the station, from the power plants to the customers that are on our service territory. Our ECC is in charge of where those outages and how we sequence those outages and folks go out to do those repairs. So as I talked about earlier, next slide. Okay, so how do we restore power? So there's a sequence of activities that we as Duke Energy go through. So a typical sequence, right? So public safety situations. If someone's in an unsafe situation, down power line, an emergency, we're going to dispatch folks to those areas. I mean, right away when it's safe to do so. Think about that. And so we're in a storm. We naturally can't put people out in bucket trucks. We have wind restrictions. So we hunker down or sequester our group and our troops as we get out into the areas where they're not impacted by the storm, and we stage those trucks, we stage that equipment, we stage people, food, and all of those areas, so that when the storm resides and the conditions are safe, we can get those people to where the storm damage occurred and get restoration in sequence. So public safety situations are a primary focus, and we restore the down power lines and locating them so that there's no danger immediately to public safety. Then our transmission system. So I get the power from a power plant out to our system. So we look at the damage assessments in our transmission systems, because even if your neighborhood has a good solid distribution system, if the transmission system cannot get power to you, you're going to be in the dark, which we don't want that to happen. So we're doing our best to harden our system and make sure that our infrastructure is continually improved and continually robust enough so to provide reliable energy to all of our customers. Then we look at critical and essential facilities. So those are emergency services. I'm reading because there's a long list of them. I'm not going to read them all, but critical infrastructure, hospitals, law enforcement, fire department, water treatment. We leverage the counties and we reach out to the counties that we serve. Again, 1.7 million customers, 36 counties across the state. And you can imagine the magnitude of communication that has to happen through the incident command, through our distribution center, or DCC, our ECC, and our incident command structure that we have. So our distribution lines, we get the largest, and then we look at our distribution system. Where do we get, after all of those other ones are done, where do we get the biggest bang for the buck? Where's the largest restoration of customers that we start with? And then we go on down the line on how we restore power to the different areas in our service territory. Next slide. So outage status communication. What do? We have 24/7 call centers. We have the automated customer service lines that you can log into. I was fortunate enough or unfortunate enough to go and take customer service calls last year. And I can tell you, it's very, very humbling to hear and listen to some of the folks that are in need and take those calls and really understand and listen to what needs to happen so that we can get people restored. It's all about listening. It's all about communication and telling folks and communicating to folks when we're going to get your power back on. And again, go to the website as well. So hopefully if you have a laptop, if you're at a shelter and you have Wi-Fi and things like that, you can go and look at real-time outage maps. And again, they'll show you down to your street where those outages are and what the ETRs are. Now, it takes us some time to do damage assessments, so those ETRs don't come out right away, but it takes us a little bit of time to build that data, analyze the data, have our damage assessors go out in the field, and then post that information. Either we do it on social media, we put it on our Duke Energy website, we put it on Facebook and Twitter. We have folks that monitor all of our social media pages, and we also have full-time 24/7 customer services. We take our employees from all of our customer service areas, whether they're in Florida, South Carolina, North Carolina, Kentucky, Ohio, and all of them will impact or answer phones for Florida outages should we need that robust background of community and customer service. So we can ramp up and ramp back down depending upon the need. We also have mobile customer service areas that go to areas, and we did some of that during Hurricane Michael up in the Panhandle last year. Next slide. What do we do from a hurricane preparation? So our customers report outages. Again, they don't speak to a lot of customers, don't speak to a lot of folks, but what do? We do our annual preparedness drills. In order to be good at something, and I'm not sure we really want to be good at hurricane response because we don't want to have hurricanes, but what we do just to make sure that we have our people in play, we have our whole process in play, our hurricane preparedness drills, our instant command structure, our emergency operating center and leaders. We go through a complete structured drill on communication, documentation. Where would the logistics be? We create incidents or mock incidences to say, what do we have and how do we respond, to make sure that our communication experts and our experts in the field know what to do, when to do it, and where to go. So it's practice and practice and practice, and we can continue to do that as an organization. So next slide. This is just a rough, or not a rough, but a high-level rendition of our regional incident command structure. So when we have a level 3, and we have different levels of incident command structures, and so this would be a level 3 major, as we call it, and how it escalates up. We have planning chiefs, we have logistics, liaison officers, public information folks, finance, all the different things. So at the top, region incident commander, safety, right? We have grid officers, we have operations chiefs, and then each zone will have an incident commander. And those zones are stationed throughout the community when it's safe to enter those areas so that we can get our resources to where the outages are. Next slide. So at Duke, we're doing a lot with our storm plan improvements. We're hardening the infrastructure. You know, we're going from replacing poles when they're damaged or old. And I know that takes time and it takes a lot of effort. And as an organization, we're doing everything that we can to improve our ETRs and look at what our response times would be. So the top picture is an area where, you know, we have damage, but at the bottom picture on this slide right here, you can see that we staged, this is maybe a staged website area, a site area where we have 1,000 people that are staged with trucks, fuel, food, materials, and ready to go to get on the ground to go out and serve the customer. Next slide. So, and then I'm going to just touch on generator safety. So on generator safety, a couple of things, and I don't have a lot of time left, but I do want to just talk about generator safety from employee safety, both for the Duke Energy employees that may come out and serve the area and do outage restoration. But I also want to talk about personal safety for folks that have generators at their house. If you're fortunate enough to have a generator at your home, we hope you don't have to use it. But if you do and you have one, the recommendation is now, while we're not in a storm, is go out there and test that generator. Right? Make sure it runs. Make sure you do your monthly test. Make sure it's ready to go. It's fueled. The fuel is good. The fuel tank is up and filled, and everything is ready to go. Do it now. Don't wait for the storm to come and scramble to make that stuff happen. So never connect them to electrical outlets in your house. So a portable generator, you should never plug into an electrical outlet. What that does is it takes away your breaker connections in your house, and you could end up with a fault, and that could cause a fire. So follow electrical safety, read the owner's manual, make sure you're not doing something that puts yourself, your home, and your family in jeopardy or in an unsafe condition. Electricity doesn't give you a second chance. It will bite you, it will kill you, and it's a very dangerous situation. So from, and those are, you know, standby and household generators. Again, household generators, fixed or stationary, however they may be, make sure that they're ready to go, make sure they're properly grounded, make sure you have the fuel stored in the right place. So if you have gas, you don't want to store it right next to something hot, right next to something flammable. Those are all common sense things, and I'm just going to kind of skip through them. Our biggest concern with generators is backfeeding. So backfeeding, when you plug in a generator, if you don't have a switch that disconnects, and if you haven't had it installed properly by a contractor or a licensed contractor and inspected to make sure that it operates properly and doesn't provide an opportunity for backfeed, we want to make sure that the folks that are out there restoring power, you energize your house and you have your switch, you could be energizing the power line outside. If someone's out there working and you flip your switch on and come into play, and you could actually cause that person who's out there working on those lines to get a shock. And that's something that we really take seriously, and we encourage everybody who has a generator to make sure you understand it, read the owner's manual, read this transfer switch properly, make sure that you're operating it within accordance with the design so that no one gets hurt and that your house, yourself, and your family are protected. And I have more, but and again, we'll provide that information for generator safety tips. You can also go to our website. We have all of these things on our website for generator safety. Please go there. Please get familiar with it. And again, Duke Energy is here to serve you. So be prepared and be ready to go when the storm hits. And we'll be there to turn your lights back on. Hopefully they don't go off. But if they do, you can bet we'll have 10, 15, 20,000 people here in the state to try and restore power. And Summer, with that, I'll turn it back to you.
Okay, thank you very much, Tony. That was great information. And just one more tidbit from the fire side, if you have a generator, be sure that you have a carbon monoxide detector, even though your generator is outside, very important as it's a colorless and odorless gas, and you want to have detection for that. All right, Anna Marie Millett, we will now bring her on screen from Pinellas County Consumer Protection, and she's going to talk about price gouging, home repair, and licensed contractors. Thank you, Anna.
Thank you. Can everybody hear me? All right.
We can hear you.
Good. I know we're limited on time, so I'll make it quick. Pinellas County Consumer Protection investigates consumer business disputes. So as a consumer, if you have problems with a company you did business with, you can file a complaint with us and we investigate it. We have main sections that handle our complaints. If you go to the next slide, most of our complaints are civil in nature, can't be proven criminal. So those complaints will go to our dispute resolution. The investigators in this section are certified mediators through the Supreme Court of Florida, and they work with the parties through mediation. So this could be a telephone conference, an in-office conference, or if necessary, we'll go out to the consumer's home to have the mediation there. Of course, during this time of pandemic, we're only doing telephone conferences. Still very successful. It's an alternative to going to court and an opportunity for the parties to reach a satisfactory resolution. Next slide, please. If it is found to be a violation of a consumer protection law, it's going to go to our criminal investigation section. We are housed with the state attorney's office. Summer, if you want to show the next slide. We are housed with the state attorney's office, and we have two assistant state attorneys that handle these criminal cases. So our investigators will prepare the reports, and then the state attorney's office will handle the prosecution. I've listed some of the typical violations that we see. The two in red I'll be talking about in just a few minutes, but that gives you an idea of some of the complaints that we handle. Next slide, please. We also have a regulatory section. So consumer protection is responsible for the licensing of specific establishments and the enforcement of certain county ordinances. And this is to help protect the citizens of Pinellas County. Again, I've listed out the licensing areas and the monitoring, and then the ones in red I'll be speaking about. Next slide. So as you can see in red there, price gouging. And this term is used all the time, but being misused. So price gouging, it's the unlawful use for someone to sell necessary goods or services at higher than normal price during a state of emergency. And that's the key word. I get calls all the time where somebody has made a purchase and they feel they've spent too much money or they were overcharged. That may just be that consumer didn't do their homework in researching to get the best deal. It may be a company that charges high prices, but the key here with price gouging is during a state of emergency. And so it's going to be necessary goods. So for a hurricane, that could be plywood for your windows and doors. It could be bottled water, even with the pandemic, face masks and hand sanitizer. So we're seeing that. If you believe that a business or an individual is price gouging, again, during a state of emergency, you can report that information directly to our office. We ask that you document it. So tell us the location where it is, the brand, product, what they're selling it at, what exactly is going on. If you could take a picture, that's helpful. If you actually made the purchase, then provide us a copy of your receipt. That'll be extremely helpful. We do work with Florida Attorney General's office, so we will, work with them and share that information. But here locally, Consumer Protection can go out to those locations and we can check it out for ourselves. We can see what's going on. We can also speak to the business owner, so it's extremely helpful. Next slide, please. This is all year long. Organizations asking for donations, but we see an increase usually during holidays and then after some natural disaster. Keep in mind the important thing here is that all charities soliciting in Florida, with some exceptions, are required to register and file their financial information with Florida Department of Agriculture and Consumer Services. So I encourage everybody who wants to donate to a charity to go to their website, and I've listed it there, freshfromflorida.com, to check out to make sure, one, that the charity is registered, and two, how much of your donation is actually going to the organization. Keep in mind, all charities are going to have additional costs to operate. But this gives you an understanding that how much of your donation is actually going towards the cause as opposed to other expenses. And you want to make sure that they are registered because, again, after a natural disaster, such as a hurricane, sometimes overnight charities will pop up and they're not qualified and they could be scammed. So we want to protect you and money. Next slide, please. There's going to be a lot of red flags, any of these types of scams. So when somebody, some of the things you want to be aware of is if it's an individual versus an organization. There's a lot of organizations that are already established to collect your donations and to distribute it properly. So be wary of an individual that's collecting on behalf of an organization. If there's pressure tactics. One thing also to keep in mind is when you are checking out a charity, a lot of times, especially with fraudulent ones, but a lot of times charities in general will have similar sounding names. So you want to be careful of that and make sure that you are choosing the charity that you want or that it is the charity that you think it is, because the names could be very similar. And then we always recommend that if you are going to give, perhaps do it by check. That way you have documentation and always make it out to the organization's name. You can do next slide, please. The other thing that we see, and again, this is all year round, but we can increase after a natural disaster, such as a hurricane or any other type of disaster. And you could do all the bullet points if you would, Summer. So as I mentioned earlier, one of the red highlighted areas was home solicitation. And this is if someone is coming to your door unsolicited, you did not invite them, unsolicited, selling a product or service $25 or more. This is a Florida state law that they must have a home solicitation permit, or commonly known as door-to-door sales. Here in Pinellas County, they would get it through the clerk of the court. So again, after a hurricane, you may have damage to your property, and all of us are in a panic. We want our lives to go back to normal as quickly as possible. You may contact an established company or business contractor, and they may say a few weeks or a few months before they can actually get out there to make repairs. All of a sudden, you have a knock at the door. Seems like it's heaven sent. Here's somebody showing up saying they can do the repairs for you and they can do it at a good deal. But again, you haven't had that chance to research them, check them out. If they're unlicensed or uninsured, they may cause more damage to your property. If they get injured on your property, it will be your responsibility if they're uninsured. So again, you can reach out to Pinellas County Construction Licensing Board, and I've listed their phone number to see if they are registered as a licensed contractor, and then also that they're insured. So it's very important. We always recommend, and I know it's still after a hurricane, but at least try to get 3 bids or estimates. That way you can compare apples to apples, make sure that you have all the information included. When you have a contract, you can go to the next slide. You want to make sure that it includes all the information. So make sure it has the start date, make sure it has the finish date, all the detailed information. Make sure that you understand it before you sign it, because once you sign it, it is legally binding. One thing to keep in mind with a contract, it may be within it, is what's called assignment of benefits. And this is an agreement that you're releasing your rights or allowing that third party to contact your insurance company directly, and they will deal directly with the insurance company as opposed to you doing that. And you might say, well, that sounds wonderful, and I'm going to definitely sign that paper. But the issue that you have with that is that if you have a problem with that job or that contractor and there's a dispute, they're not doing the work right, whatever the case may be, you reach out to your insurance company to inform them of the issues and maybe ask them to hold off on payment. They will not communicate with you because you've signed this agreement. You've literally released your rights to speak with the insurance company. So again, understand the contract, make sure everything's included, get those estimates, definitely do your homework. It will save you time and money and heartache down the road. So again, there are several tips, and I know we're limited on time, so I won't go through all of them. If you go next slide. But if you go to our website, we have a post-disaster consumer tip brochure, and there it is. I know it's a little challenging to read. It covers the topics that I just spoke about very briefly. It also includes important resources. So as you can see on the left there's some resources if you need additional information. But our website, if you go to the next slide, Summer, our website has wonderful information, not just on post-disaster tips, but also on all kinds of consumer information. So feel free to reach out to us at pinellascounty.org/consumer for this information and more. If you want to speak to an investigator, feel free to give us a call, 727-464-6200, and you can speak with one of our investigators about post-disaster tips or any other information regarding consumer issues, and we can tell you how to file a complaint. You can do it directly on our website also. Thank you.
Thank you, Anna Marie. All right, that was some great information from all of our panelists. Now I'm going to have Eileen Carey join us, and she is going to facilitate any questions that we've received from our viewers.
Hello, thank you all for attending. I am Eileen Carey. I serve as our community engagement specialist at the City of Largo, and I would like to invite up some panelists to answer a few questions as we move forward. So if you make your video live, we've already got Summer, Mecca, Jess, Tony, Officer Tran, and Anna Marie. And because our panelists were so thorough in presenting their areas, we only have one question I'm going to direct toward Mecca right now. And that question is, do our shelters accept our residents who are undocumented? And if not, what are options for families who are undocumented?
Yes, our shelters accept any person. We are there for safety.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing information with our viewers. Summer, at this time, I don't see any other questions coming in that have already been answered.
All right. Well, I just want to thank all of our wonderful panelists again, everyone, all of our City of Largo staff from working behind scene to help us make this webinar a success. And thank you, our residents and our viewers, for being here and taking that next step in hurricane preparedness. If you have any other questions that you think of, you're welcome to email us at firerescue@largo.com, and we will have this webinar posted up on largo.com/emergency. So thank you, everyone. Stay safe, and let's hope that we have a quiet rest of our hurricane season. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.